Hello, podcast listener. It's 250 episodes deep, and you've come along for all of them, haven't you? Haven't you? Well, good news. Tucker and I are going to celebrate by having one of our random conversations that goes everywhere, and then we're going to give away some money, but you don't get any of it unless you are the executive director of a nonprofit. Sit back, relax, enjoy our 250th episode of JJ Meets World. Pew, 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 pew. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
So, Tucker, I made my own ringtone this week.
Okay.
Have you ever made a ringtone on an iPhone?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so you can take any song and you can go through these steps and essentially turn it into a ringtone.
Okay.
And choose the 30 seconds you want. So there's an old song that was used in a lot of Looney Tunes, like whenever they'd go into like a factory, like bum bum bum,
Yep.
and it's called Powerhouse. And you can listen to the old version of it, but this is from the Looney Tunes Back in Action film, which you and I saw together at like a 9 o'clock on a Sunday night screening.
Yeah.
But I enjoy this because it's a blend of old school and new school with this rock guitar. Isn't that awesome?
That is great. So is that the kind of ringtone that you make everyone else have to hear the whole thing before you answer your call?
Yeah, I will avoid answering right away. Like, be like, Jay's not going to pick up until the 4th or 5th ring.
You know what's hilarious? I haven't even thought about ringtones for like 10 years at least.
So what do you use on your phone then?
It's silent. Like it's almost never actually ringing, and it's just one of the built-in rings. It sounds like a ring. It doesn't sound like anything else. I used to back in the day when that was all like a novel thing. Before we had smartphones, we're trying to figure out how do we make these cell phone things more fun, this technology. And so the whole thing was, you buy ringtones, you buy ringbacks. So
those are the worst.
I used those too for a period of time. Those were basically the MySpace of like cell phones at that point, right?
And people, you paid like $2.99 a month to have a ringback tone.
So pretty good money, yeah. And I was putting in Bob Dylan songs and stuff, and I was getting complaints from my mother because my mom would call me and have to listen. She doesn't like Bob Dylan.
Oh,
and so she'd have to listen to that, and she wasn't a fan of that. But also, boo on me for doing that because that's not cool. I should never have done that. That's silly.
My voicemail has been the same for a while because I use it as my line benders phone as well. So it's like, thank you for calling JJ Gordon with the line benders. Leave your name and number, and I'll get back to you. And partially it's like, why am I asking for your number anymore? I don't need it. It's right there.
Right.
Like, unless I need to call a number that is different from the one that showed up in my caller ID.
Right.
Even like, do you remember old voicemails like, leave your name, number, and the time you called, and I'll get back to you. We don't need any of that information anymore.
I remember as a kid, like begging my parents to let me be the one to leave the voicemail recording.
Oh yeah.
So I could try to be funny. I always thought it was never funny, and they'd let it, they'd let it sit there for 30 minutes. Then I think when I left the room, they would just re-record, a normal one on top of it. But yeah,
there was an old rumor that you should never say the name of your family on your outgoing message, because then they could find your address and they know you're not home because no one answered, and they could come rob you.
So then what would you say then?
Right. Like, be like, hi, we're not home right now. Could you please leave a message?
Oh, just like that.
But to me, it's tomfoolery, because how do they get your number to begin with? It's not like they were like 701-232-5081, 232-5082, 232-5. No one's doing that.
But also, we're in a completely different world in our relationship with phones now, where if I'm getting a phone call from someone, I'm like, who died? Oh no. Why does someone want to speak with me?
Right.
I don't want to speak with them. Text me or Facebook me or do all these other things. And if someone calls, like if I call someone, I'm still in the habit of leaving a voicemail, but yeah, they don't need it. They saw that I called. Unless it's, I need you to have this information the moment, as soon as you can. But that never happens. I'm texting you in that moment. So like, I'm just immediately suspicious now of anytime my dad calls, it's bad news.
Really?
It just is. Like, it's going to be. Otherwise, he'll text. If it's like, if he wants to just get together for lunch, it'll be a text message. But otherwise, if it's a phone call, it's he or someone in our family is in the hospital.
I've arrived at the age where if someone calls me after 9:30 at night, it's bad.
For sure.
Because it's like, why would you? I'm watching Law and Order SVU. Why are you calling right now?
Right.
And occasionally I'll get calls from people who've had like a little too much to drink. And then I'll be like, I don't need to talk to you right now. Like, we're done. We're done with this conversation.
JJ, I just realized I've made a faux pas. You're sitting here with a couple of cracked beverages to celebrate an occasion, and I have not cracked mine yet.
Yeah.
So I could crack mine on mic, and we can kind of talk about.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Day.
I've come up with a great idea for today, just so you know.
Right.
So you're gonna open up what I would call a pounder Pepsi.
Yeah. This is my favorite kind of way to drink.
Let's hear that in the mic. Oh, that was a satisfying opening.
I know.
Oh, I'm a little jealous. Now, Tucker's enjoying an ice cold Pepsi. I'm enjoying an ice cold Diet Coke. And it's 9:34
in the morning.
9:34. And I've opened two of them so one of them can get flat by the time I get to the other one.
He's got two open Diet Coke pounders just sitting in front.
Yeah, just doing
one in front of the left hand, one in front of the right.
And I'm working on lefty first.
Lefty first.
I'm working left to right, like reading.
I'm surprised you don't take from the right and slowly pour it into the left over time.
No, there's too much margin for error. Like, I don't want to spill any of it, and I certainly don't want to get any of it on my skin.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff's practically poison. Right. I'd rather just drink it.
I'd rather just digest it.
Okay, so it's our 250th episode.
250.
Can you believe we've made it this far? I'm kind of shocked.
It's crazy. I love throwing out that number now to people.
Like 250 episodes.
Yeah. Oh, I produced JJMW. We've had at least 250 episodes.
NBD, but I was just talking with previous guest Patrick Kirby, and he was like, yeah, we just hit like 132 episodes. And he was kind of gloating about that a little bit. And then it was brought up like, well, JJ, how many are in your episodes? I'm like, well, actually, we're recording 250 this weekend. And they're like, what? I'm like, yep. And I think we arrived at this quickly because our old model was we'd roll out 2 a week. Yeah, so that really helped us like get the foundation laid.
Get out of the gate. And 250 is a really nice number, right? Quarter of a thousand. It's just nice. It's a nice. It's a milestone number that I always want to try to celebrate in big fashion, but I actually enjoy that it's just us sitting here having sodas right now.
Would you estimate, as the engineer of this podcast, that we are 300 hours of content or more than that?
I can't remember now. When we did episode 200, I think, was that when I had, and one of our previous milestones must have been 200. I had tabulated the amount of time. So I'll have to go back and look. I mean, it wouldn't shock me to find out that that's the case. I mean,
we know that every episode is an hour.
At least.
Yeah. So we know we're at 250 hours, but a lot of them have gone over. I mean, even if you think about it, if we averaged an hour and 15 minutes for even half of those, I think that we're probably close to the 300 hour mark.
Right.
Which means that like pretty soon you'll say like 525,600
we will. No. I don't like that song. I actually have a visceral reaction.
Wait, whoa.
No.
Why? Okay. Why don't you like the song Seasons of Love from Rent?
Because when I was in show choir, we had to sing that song, and I got forced into show choir by my girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And this was 9th grade, and we would have to get up at like 7 a.m. to go sing that song specifically. And that was just a terrible time. And so that brought me straight back
Really?
to ninth grade.
Because my pitch is so off?
No, because you were singing that song. It was.
What about if I move my shoulders and like snap my fingers while I do it?
No.
525,000.
And
So-
I like Rent, but I have to go la 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 la.
What year was this? How old were you? You said
This would have been ninth grade.
okay. That is messed up. Because that song talks about dying from AIDS. There's a part about a transvestite in there, and like that's the thing that I always think is so funny is that there are people who are like, this song is so great and it's got such a great message. We're like, but did you read the lyrics? Did you actually go in there and don't get me wrong, I love that song and I think it's great that you got to sing as a ninth grader. But I think if you even had like one parent who just was like, I've seen Rent.
I just waking up at 6:30 in the morning so I could get on my bike and ride to Ben Franklin to put on this, like, we had these these t-shirt uniforms we had to wear, and then practice that song with hand motions with the girlfriend I didn't want to like date anymore, but I was so whipped I had no idea how to get out of it.
Right, you're trapped.
And I was trapped. And I was like, I could be sleeping right now. And instead I'm singing this song, doing these hand motions. I'm way too tired at a school that I don't want to be at, right? Like I have to be here for class all day. I don't want to be here earlier and I want to get out of here as quickly as I can. So yeah, no thank you to that song.
In cups of coffee.
I have to tell you, we lost a viewer.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Which one? Who decided to tune out?
My mom.
Oh really?
She told me last night we were having dinner.
Based off of what?
Apparently, I don't recall this, but you were talking about diarrhea at one point.
Yeah.
Which one was that?
I was talking about unpopular things like I like having diarrhea. I feel like I could get something done.
I guess we lost mom because of that.
Really? That was the point when she's like, I no longer can listen anymore.
That's what she said. She said JJ was talking about diarrhea, and I said, you know what? I got other things to listen to.
Huh. Well, there's a threshold for everybody, right?
I want you to keep talking about diarrhea. You
know
talk about whatever you want, JJ, and she can deal with it.
Right. You know what's too bad for Maureen is because if she just would have stuck it out, our special 250th episode. So what I did is I went to the bank and I took out $1,000 in cash. Okay. And I am going to donate $250 to 4 charities based off of our conversation that we have here today.
Very cool.
And I'm going to do it in the name of the listeners of JJ Meets World.
Yeah. So it's not in mom's name.
So sorry, Tucker's mom.
Yeah, mom.
Turns out
you had a chance to give without having to give.
The juice is worth the squeeze, baby. Come on.
Well, I did tell that we were recording 250 today, so maybe she'll be like, well, it's my son's 250th. I should tune in for that.
Right.
Also, I started using the dad voice there, and I apologize, Mom. I should never use the dad voice. The dad voice is the voice that me and JJ and Dave Brunsfold and a bunch of other friends use when we're talking about the fathers that we know in our lives. And it's always something like this. It's some variation of.
We have horrible impressions of some of our friends. Like when I do this voice, you know exactly what the impression of. And you're like, oh God,
we know it when the blah happens. We know who that is.
I wonder what the impressions people do of me. Like, what's it like?
I mean, I don't think I've seen one.
I wish that there's a podcast called Everything I Dislike About JJ, and I could use it as like a personal place to just jump off.
If I found out that people were doing impressions of me, I would be elated. But
right.
I don't think they are. I think they're just complaining. I think they're just commiserating with each other about me, which is fine. That means, like, that's right. That's right. You commiserate about me. Yeah. You eat it. But if they were doing impressions, I'd be in a better spot, probably.
I also think, like, I love how people hide behind the, like, well, is the imitation is the highest form of flattery? Which to me is just a way to say, like, you can't get a bit mad at me for the impression I'm doing. Now, let me be correct. There are good kinds of impressions and bad kinds of impressions. There are ones that are meant to purposely be hurtful, and there are ones that are meant to actually, be like, listen, I'm telling you, I'm picking the perfect moment of you, and I'm showcasing you in a light that may not seem flattering, but is endearing at the same time.
I think a classic example of that is any artist who got covered by Weird Al.
Well, 100%.
You know, I think it was Dave Grohl had said in an interview, I believe, that they were just elated to find out that he wanted to make fun of Smells Like Teen Spirit, and that they were just like, yes, please, this is amazing. This is so. They were Weird Al fans, and it meant something to them that he wanted to parody their song. I mean, because it not only did it mean that he thought it was worth parodying, but that it meant that it actually had reached a cultural milestone. Because when you've got Weird Al parodying you, that means you've kind of made it, right? He's the cleanest billionaire out there. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a billionaire.
Oh, I think that he's done very well.
I mean, he's
himself.
no question he's a multimillionaire. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a billionaire just because he was so.
Like he invested in a rubber chicken factory or something like that.
Yeah,
like as a joke.
Something, I mean, clearly he doesn't seem to have the same destructive vices that other successful people have.
I'm surprised that he doesn't have like a bologna brand, because he did that like my bologna. There's a parody of My Sharona. And I am a huge fan of Weird Al Yankovic, and I think he's done some great stuff. And I like his original tunes. One of the most endearing things I've ever seen is he was on Conan when his last album hit, and it hit #1, and it was his first gold album, and Conan got to present him the letter that says, "Congratulations, you've gone platinum." I think
it was.
Show? Yeah, you've got the #1 album in the country right now.
Wow.
And he is moved in a way that I don't think a lot of people really understand, because this is a guy who performs to sold out arenas, but has kind of realized, I will never be taken seriously in the music industry to the point of where I could ever have a #1 album. I could ever frame a Billboard chart from a week. And so getting to have that, I think, is the culmination in a lot of amazing work.
Which is crazy in a lot of ways, because he is objectively one of the most talented musical artists working. I mean, there's plenty of clips online of him in the studio, either recording or editing. I wish I could. I gotta find it. I saw this years ago. It was a video of him in the studio. Basically, he was doing what you were doing. You're just sort of sitting on a couch, right? And then he had an engineer who was editing the song, and he was sitting there listening to it, and he was sort of giving directions like, okay, let's pause there. Let's go back, this many seconds. Let's up the tempo, blah, 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 blah. Let's do this or do that. And he's moving really fast, and it's brilliant to watch him do it. He's this fantastic mind. He clearly understands all these different instruments that are being layered in, and he's got a very deep and rich sense of it. And most musical artists wouldn't be able to do anything like that.
Right.
He was very much, he had a sort of, if I could use their names in the same sentence, a Prince-like ability when it comes to being masterful at all these different types of music and knowing how to bring them together in a sound that is then his own.
When I toured Paisley Park, one of the cool things is Prince had a custom-made mic stand, because he would sit at the engineer's table. Like he was working the board himself, but if he wanted to add something like a background track or something, he had a huge mic stand that would go over the engineering board so that he wouldn't have to get up, go into the studio and record it. So he'd be in there. And so it's interesting, because at Paisley Park, there's a sound foam on the walls of the booth.
Nice. Are you telling me that's what you want now?
I mean, it would be fine.
Giant microphone. I have been sitting around spending some time thinking about, like, if I could design from scratch my absolute ultimate podcasting conversation studio, what would it be? Yeah. And one of the biggest things is I'd love to find a way to record the voices without the microphone being right there, without the mic sort of being in the way of everything. And I've been looking at different types of mics that are like, I think they're called pencil condensers. They're basically a shotgun without the tube. That can work, but you really have to sort of have the right kind of room. So if I were able to construct the right kind of room, then I could probably put microphones into a center console that are pointing at people from like 2 or 3 feet away from those people, so they're not thinking about the microphone at all. They're just sitting and talking. That'd be nice.
See, now I like having the microphone, because it reminds me that I am actually doing something right now that is going to be consumed later.
Right.
Now, and I sit in front of a microphone for 3 hours every single day, so it's actually more than that, because I have to cut commercials. You know, if you've ever heard my sweet, sultry voice being like, if your car's gathering dust and rust, now's the perfect time to get your trade in. So stop in. But to me, this reminds me, it's a good reminder, but I also know that the microphone that I am in front of right now is one of the most anxiety creating things I've ever been around for other people. Mm-hmm. There are folks who like sit down and just, you know, are afraid of this microphone.
Right.
And so that would be a good idea. So I like your concept. I'd like to go in there and play around a little bit.
Yeah, we're working on a new studio right over here, just down the hall from us. And
he's pointing for the listener.
So that's going to be the new recording studio in a couple of months. But we're not doing a bunch of things to change it. We're mostly basically going to get a bunch of pipe and drape that we're going to ring around the whole room for sound dampening when needed, and a bunch of other things we do to it. So that's not going to be that sort of ideal perfect one. It'll be a little bit better than the one we're in right now. Which we'll actually still be able to record in at any time, because this is my office. This is my edit bay. But
Tucker, okay, so just deep dive into Tucker. So we've talked about you
dive
move
into me
on
deep.
A pretty regular basis. Like in as a friend, you had more places of residence than anyone else.
I mean, I would guess I've been averaging a move every 2 to 3 years for a good period of between 2 and 4 years. There were a few places I've stayed at for about 4 years, but yeah. Since I turned 18, I'm 36 now. I've moved
so you're
a lot.
talking about at least 9 moves,
yeah.
9-ish moves.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Restless, right?
Yeah. But I also noticed that with your office, like,
yep.
I kind of wonder, like, if I don't see Tucker for a month, like, what's his office configuration going to be like this time?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a good read on why my personality is like this, but, it's more or less me like getting to me, it doesn't feel like I'm constantly changing, as it's that I'm constantly getting closer to what feels right and works really well. But also sometimes, like the room that we're in right now, it's my edit bay at the office. When I am at the office, when I'm not working from home, it's our recording studio. But it's supposed to it gets used for a number of different things. And so how I've thought it needs to be laid out has changed over time, because like clients come in, they look at the TV that's behind me and all this other stuff people can't see. And even then I'm more or less almost like every time I'm in a room, it's almost like I'm trying to get comfortable in it, and I just can't get fully comfortable in it. I just rearranged my bedroom for like the 30th time. So it says something about me.
Yeah,
something, but at the same time, I think what it is too is it might just be that I have no good sense of feng shui. I can tell when it's off, but I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
So maybe if I was like living with like a woman who knew how to fix it, then I'd be like, oh, she figured it out. Oh, there we go. That's how it should be laid out. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
But I think part of that is like your personality, right? Like the moss doesn't grow underneath your feet, and I think that creative people need change like that, right? So if you think of an artist studio, well, it might be the same place, but there's different canvases being worked on all the time, or this is changing, or the group that's coming in to record, and so change on a frequent basis, I think, is important to an artist.
It can also be a form of procrastination, though. Right?
Sure can.
Like it can be like, I do need to get this thing done, but first I should really figure out how these shelves should go, right?
Isn't that bizarre that like I will give myself tasks that have no meaning whatsoever,
right,
in place of getting something done. And I'll tell myself, why are you doing this? You don't need to hose out the garbage cans right now. You need to be finishing cooking dinner. Yeah. Like, what are you doing? I'm just about to embark on a vacation. So it's some just straight up time off. And it's the first set of days I've had in this new kind of world of the pandemic, which is like we're going out and doing things, but some stuff isn't open as long as it used to be. And so yesterday I needed to go and buy some lumber, and my wife was mad because I'm going to start another project before I finish a couple of projects that she wants me to finish.
Gotcha.
And I said, you know what? I want to do this because I know I can do this in one day. What I'm building is a structure that will be mobile. I mean, 2 people would have to move it, but it'll be mobile, and it'll have hammock chairs on it because I love hammock chairs. We had a couple of them at the lake, and they're just my freaking favorite thing. And I want some right now, man. I want it. I'm going to have it. I'm gonna get it. And so I'm very excited to do that. And later today, I'm planning on building those and having them done. But I am avoiding other projects.
Yeah, I'm a little overcommitted right now. I was telling you this before we started. Like I'm working on a number of different people's video projects that I'm really excited to be working on. One in particular that I just won't go into because he hasn't announced it yet. But and at the same time, I've got a job, and we've got this fundraiser for Theater Beat coming up here in August, and the podcast and family stuff that's going on. And in all that, I've got some of my own projects that I've been really amped to try to get on board with too. You'd think for being like a single dude without like a family, I just have nothing but free time, but I then find ways to fill it up. And then I find ways to avoid a lot of that stuff by doing stuff that doesn't need to be done in that moment. Like the dishes have been done, but I could probably do them again, or I should this laundry basket's about half full. Might as well do the laundry now and get this done now. Those things happen too.
The other night, so like my office is just in complete disarray right now, and I am just kind of letting it get worse and worse and worse rather than dealing with it. And so the other night, Jill was out of town, and I said, you know what? I'm going to deal with this. But you know what? This pantry has really been asking for like a clean out and a reorg. And so then I find myself doing that, and I'm like, there goes the whole night.
Yeah.
And you know what? It doesn't matter because the pastas, I can find it in the same spot it was before. By the way, hey, so I don't know how you are about carbs, and I don't actively cut carbs out of my diet.
You watched me eat like a fried peanut butter roll
right before we started. So I am trying because I'm trying to, continue my weight loss journey. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I looked at was like, are there alternatives to pasta that are great? And we're not sponsored by. It's called Barzilla, I believe, and it's a chickpea pasta that you can get at Costco. Oh my gosh, it is tasty. It's wonderful. We made mac and cheese out of it the other night, and it's like almost like a fifth of the carbs of regular pasta.
Does it? How does it? As far as like cooking with it and everything, is it different in any way?
Exactly the same.
Does it taste different?
Nope.
Really?
I mean, it tastes like good pasta. Like,
okay,
so
sure.
This is something I found out way too late in my life, which is not all pastas are equal.
Right.
So there are some that are just amazing and so good. And part of pasta by its nature is interesting. So anytime you boil something, you are essentially boiling out like flavor and nutrients and stuff on it.
Okay.
That's why you have to add things like a lot of salt or chicken stock to make soup tasty. Right. So pasta by its nature, you're boiling. And so you're actually boiling out a lot of stuff. Now, some people save their pasta water because it's so rich and starchy that they use it when they're cooking other things.
Okay.
But really good pasta, even after you boil it, will still have flavor to it. Or there's other pasta where it's like, well, this is just keeping me alive at best. So that's something that I've discovered later in my life that I'm like, oh, if only younger JJ would have known this. And the same thing, I know you're a potato fan.
Oh yeah,
How do you cook for your potatoes?
I mean, I pretty much just cut up a potato and fry it in a pan.
Great
for the most part.
So you're keeping most of the flavor with it.
Yeah, I mean, like my go-to meal lately in my own weight loss journey, it has been basically chicken, some potato, and spinach, just sort of fried up together, like in a pan. As like a simple meal that
chicken a la Tucker.
Yeah, it's just the easiest thing on earth to do. And so, but I love fried potatoes. I love hash browns. I don't go through the effort of like making fries or anything like that. But.
So recently someone was telling me that they do mashed potatoes by baking potatoes and then mashing them. And they said it's entirely different than boiling potatoes before you mash them.
I wonder why that is. So it's just locking in flavor?
You get way more flavor.
You're not losing the starch?
Right.
Is the starch flavor?
Yeah, I mean, part of it, just think of anything. Like if you were to boil meat versus baking meat, you're going to keep so much flavor in there. Okay. You're going to keep a lot of the juices.
Gotcha.
Which, by the way, boiled meat, never been a fan. Never been a fan.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm not really boiling potatoes ever anyways. I'm pretty much just dicing them and then throwing them in a pan. So I'm guessing I'm keeping all that starch there.
You should try this baked mashed potato recipe.
Right.
I think you might like it.
Right.
Because I know you do like your mashed potatoes.
I the other day was looking up, like, I want to make hash browns, but good. You know, greasy spoon restaurant quality good. And the amount of steps that I was seeing that was going into doing it was like, good Lord. I mean, you got to
get yourself a mandolin.
Yeah. Do you have to skin russets or can you just eat the skin?
You can eat the skin.
That's what I thought.
You can eat the skin of any potato.
That's what I figured. That's what I've been doing. But
the old wives' tale is that the skin is where all the nutrients are in a potato. So we actually are pulling off all the nutrients when we do that. But I don't think that is necessarily
Is that
true.
really just probably fiber or something?
Yeah. In fact, the more fiber you can get in your diet, the better.
Right. I mean,
I'm
I like
having to take
skins.
some fiber pills recently, actually.
You've had loose diarrhea stools?
No. Well, your mom's not listening anymore, so it doesn't matter. So I can talk about this.
She maybe tunes in for 250, tunes right back out.
So I had some blood where it wasn't supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
And so then immediately I'm like, oh my God, I've got colon cancer. And it turns out it's not. It turns out it was a hemorrhoid, an internal hemorrhoid.
You've had this problem before, haven't
Once
you?
before in my life,
That's right.
So that's why I wasn't like, I'm going to die. But it was like, no.
Right.
But it was to the point of where I had to make preparations so that during the day I wasn't,
Got it.
Thank God for Amazon, because now I can anonymously order products like Preparation H pads.
Yep. Thank you, astronaut
Things like
Jeff
that.
Bezos.
So to me, like this has been great, but it was a situation where I was like, I need more fiber in my diet, because one of the reasons they say you can get these things is maybe you are not having productive BMs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I've been taking fiber pills, which really make a difference, because boy, oh boy, right away in the morning. And I usually go to the work, so I'm doing it on company time.
Yeah, you could always just hit like a bowl of frosted mini wheats before you go to bed.
See, but I don't like eating before I go to bed.
That's actually a terrible idea. Don't do what I just said. That's an awful idea.
And then you got all that dairy sitting in your stomach all night.
I have to be really, really careful now. I've reached the age now where I actually have to be very careful about how close to bed I eat. Because it's actually been making me sick in the morning. Because it's not all passing through. So I have a hiatal hernia and GERD, and so like it, I just have to be really careful with my digestive. I have to give it more time than a normal person would have to do, and so I have to get better. Lately, dude, I have been falling asleep at like 10 p.m.
Oh yeah,
like I've just been zonking out. I've been super tired, and it's been great because one of my life goals is to live a life where I'm waking up without an alarm, not having to hear that sound in the morning is just like the best thing ever. Right?
Yeah.
So if I'm I woke up naturally today at like 6:30. Didn't have to have an
alarm. So your circadian rhythm is kind of right where it needs to be.
Right now it's kicking butt and taking. Where was I going with this? We got into sleep. Oh no, but it was eating
before you go to bed.
Eating before I go to bed. But if let's say
and my butt blood.
Yeah. So let's say I eat even like a bowl of oatmeal at like 8:30 and then go to bed at 10, there's a good chance I'm throwing that up in the morning.
We should just rename this Two Old Men, the Two Old Men podcast.
Dude,
if I'm having myself some oatmeal at 8:30, it's a wild night.
When I was having dinner with my mom last night, I was like, Mom, you know what's fucked up? And she goes, what? I said, I remember Dad's 40th birthday. And she goes, what's wrong with that? I said, I'm 36. I remember looking at him going, wow, he's old.
He's old. Dude's got one foot in the grave already.
Yeah.
You know?
Not from lack of trying. Goodness Lord. Oh my God. It's just like, I don't like thinking about that. But then I got to tell myself, well, science has progressed a lot. And what it is to be 36 now isn't what it used to be 36 then.
Oh, I'm going to stay alive because science. We had a major breakthrough about 6 years ago. Woo!
I think so, I think science is going to be more on my side than it was on my father's side when he turned 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, now I beg to differ in some ways, because I think we have been better at keeping people alive just through medical science.
Right.
But here's the problem. We also have improved things like the process of food, right? And so the fact that so many things that we're putting in our bodies every day are not natural in any way, shape, or form.
What it sounds like you're saying is like we don't quite know the downsides of these scientific benefits we're reaping right now.
The balance of the scale is not really tipping one way or the other, because as one side gains weight, the other side gains weight as well.
It does feel weird to be in a town that's covered in smoke right now and
Yeah.
be like, is the world ending? I can't tell because this is messed up.
It looks like we're in a really bad, like, Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah, it looks like they recreated London fog for us here, but it's just fire. 2 days ago, so I live in West Fargo. I'm on the top of my building, and I was just walking out to go get some lunch, and my neighbor is moving, and so her door was open. People were moving stuff out. And I could smell what I thought was like maybe incense she was burning, or like maybe she was burning it because she's moving out and trying to clean the area or whatever, make it not smell bad. But then as I keep walking down the stairs, I was like, no, the whole building smells like this. And then I got outside and I realized, no, everything smells like it is a wood fire, like a campfire right now. And you can't see past, I couldn't see past a few miles out in the distance when I was then looking out from my apartment. It was crazy, and it's still hazy like that. It goes in and out throughout the day. I've never seen this before.
Yeah, wildfires in the last couple of years have been incredibly intense. We remember, of course, the one from Australia that the smoke was so thick it traveled across the Pacific and got to the United States. Holy Moses!
Right.
And then what happened in Canada or in California and up into Washington and Oregon. And now these Canadian wildfires are doing things like we're having to cancel outdoor theater performances. And, there are places they're saying we can't have our volleyball tournament. So I talked with a pulmonary specialist yesterday. So someone who deals with, like your lungs and everything like that. And he said, okay, so if you look at air quality, there are like certain numbers you can follow, and the higher the number, the worse the air quality. So it's really like the more pieces of, micro blah, blah, blah that are in the air that normally aren't. So we see it as smoke, but it's a lot more complex than just smoke.
Right.
So a good number is in like the 40s. And yesterday we were at 250.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like I said, so should we be doing anything? He goes, people shouldn't be outside. You should not be outside at all if you can avoid it. So we're literally now in a point where last summer we had to stay inside because of a pandemic, and now we have to stay inside because of smoke. What's the next thing? Are cats going to mutate? Like, they're like, you can't go outside. There's roaming cat gangs.
I was like, that kind of sounds awesome. I kind of feel like I'm going to join them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like if cats went to war against humans, I think I know which side I'm on. And it's not
side?
the human side.
I
know I'd be on the losing side because cats can only get so far, but I think I know which side I'm on.
In my D&D campaign, at one point, we were on a planet or a village, I can't remember, something, but there was a bear society, and the bears were having a war. The polar bears didn't like the grizzly bears, and we had to choose which bear faction we were going to side with.
Oh, man, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, it was tough because each of them had a piece of our ship that we needed to get off the planet.
Right.
So we're like, should we divide and conquer?
Who'd you side with?
I sided with the polar bears.
Okay.
Yeah. I was like, they're very powerful.
Right.
And like, yeah, so it was pretty wild. Well, how did we end this? Good question. At one point, I had a thing called a bag of holding, which is a little magic bag that you could put anything into, and it would have infinite space. If you put a person in there, though, they would freeze to death because it's something cold for whatever reason. So at one point, I had put a spaceship in there, and so we were in this fight, and it looked like we were going to die, and I took the back end of the spaceship out, and I started it and blew all these people away with like the jet engine.
Nice.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty ingenious. Our dungeon master was pissed because clearly he had other plans for what was going to happen, and I essentially was like, scorched her!
So previous guest Mike Rezel ran me through a short one-off campaign recently, and it was awesome. I'm not going to spoil how he did this whole thing because I think he's got other people he's going to run through this campaign. But he ran me through this campaign, and I clearly, like from the get-go, was making choices that he wasn't wanting me to make, and it wasn't my fault for making them. It was more him going, "Oh, I totally anticipated Tucker was going to do this other thing." And so I could sense his frustration because like there would be a character that I would meet who would be like floating there, and I'd be like, nah, I'm not going to talk to him. And I just walk past him when clearly he wants me to talk to the guy.
Yeah.
And then I had a team of characters who were with me, but since they weren't being played by people, they were just people who were going with my commands. I just protected myself the entire time by sending them to do every single thing I wanted to try.
Good move.
So I'd walk into a room and be like, all right, you go push that button. You go set that on fire.
You go do that button. You touch this and you do that.
And it got him really pissed off. I shouldn't say it got him pissed off. I could tell it frustrated him, but he wasn't mad at me. It was more or less him going, oh, shoot. Okay, what do I need to do to adapt to the situation? And getting into doing role-playing games as a dungeon master has been on my to-do list for a long time. I've always wanted to do it. And so that was a good lesson for me to realize that when I finally do get into it, I better be as like flexible and malleable as possible and try to not get too hung up on there's this very particular storyline that I want you guys to run through. Because even seasoned dungeon masters like him or like our friend the Bard can get really frustrated by it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've also been jealous of you guys having that long of a D&D campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Like every time I joined a campaign, and at any time, it typically would be done. Like the group would just dissolve within a session or two. The dungeon master would go get a new job and his mom wouldn't let him do it anymore or something like that. No, I was always like, oh, come on.
You really nailed the dungeon master motif. Got a new job and his mom wouldn't let him do it. So all the reasons that someone wouldn't be able to do it.
How big is role-playing podcasting still these days?
It's pretty big. You know, they like taping live shows and the really good ones like Harmon Quest will do a thing where they will bring in guests for one-offs.
Right.
And so you've got an overall story arc, but then you bring in this extra person who comes in and kind of throws a wrench into it. And I love watching people who've never played it before because as someone like you and I, like we're used to the storytelling medium and getting to kind of play. I hate when people say that. Like, can't we just improv? Can't we just play? I hate that. That drives me nuts. But that's what we're doing.
Did you get that Onion article I sent you?
I did. And it's funny because I had already sent that to like 4 people.
Every time I see something that shits on improv, I send it to JJ.
And listen,
but it's always accurate.
It's so right. It's 100% right.
Even the photo that they came up with of like the 4 guys doing the scene, it made me kind of vomit in the back of my throat a little bit when I saw it.
The thing about improv is like low hanging fruit for people to make fun of.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've got a collection of clips that I have on a secret YouTube playlist from things where they're like shitting on improv and stuff like that. Because like, of course, one of the great ones is from The Office when Michael Scott goes to his improv class and he's got all these fake guns that he has to keep taking out. Another one that really nails it is 22 Jump Street.
Okay.
The sequel to 21 Jump Street. They go to an improv group and Channing Tatum has never seen this before. And so when they're asking they're like, could we get a suggestion? And he goes, tampon, tampon, tampon. And she's like, I think I heard crayon. He goes, no, I said tampon. And he's like, just blown away by it. By like, they're making this up on the spot and I can yell anything I want. It's some good stuff there. It's quality stuff. So thanks for crapping on improv.
But the crapping on improv, it's the crapping on theater people in general too, right? Because it's it's the earnestness, it's the need, it's the need to get up and perform can seem to anyone, especially in that context where it's like a business group coming in and they've just hired them to come in. It's like, I'm really living my dream by performing for these people. And it's sort of that scenario, knowing that the improv performers are probably hating themselves right now, but it's like, we got to fucking make this money.
Right. Exactly.
We got to get this money.
Let's do it. Let's get it done.
Yeah,
let's be done with it.
And I think the best improv gag, though, that I never get sick of is the improv name, the company name. So whenever they have to say, I can't even come up with one right now, but I remember every time I've seen The Onion or anyone, if you have to come up with the name of the troupe.
Right, like the Giggling Panthers.
Yeah, and it has to suck. You have to hate it so much.
Room for improvement. Yeah, they're
I think the only improv group name that I like is Don Quixote's.
Yeah.
Don Quixote's, like, I think that's a great name.
Do you know I had to save that name recently?
Really?
Yeah. So previous many time over guest Kevin Kennedy took over the Fargo South High drama department, which is where I got my start in theater. And they had
I hear that guy's got a real long dick.
Big, just massive.
Just gotta-
but like it's so thin.
If you're gonna invite Kevin over to your house, make sure you find out how tall your dogs are.
That was off air, wasn't it?
was off
Like
air,
so,
yeah.
yeah. So people are like, "What is he talking about?"
Basically, when we had Rob,
No. Don't
you're
explain.
Right. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
You're right.
So he had like. He goes, the kids don't know who Don Quixote is, and so they don't know what this parody
So
is.
teach them.
I was like, I told them, I was like, this is a teachable moment. Do friggin' Man of La Mancha, like, and just take care of it.
Hey, Kevin, what's your job title? Is it teacher?
It's a teacher. And I said also, if a kid is in high school and they have never heard of Don Quixote at that time, it's time that we really start rethinking education, right?
Right.
Like this is one of like the all-time like base great stories.
Right.
So,
Is nothing sacred, Kevin?
is nothing. Terry Gilliam like pretty much died to
Yeah.
make his Don Quixote,
Right.
the man who could be Don Quixote. Anyway, I love that name too, and so he's like, I think I'm just gonna change it. I think we're just gonna call it the Fargo South Players.
That,
And I'm
that
like,
organization founded the improv scene in Fargo.
nope. Right? It's the longest running improv group in
Yeah.
200 miles.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
It's huge, and in North Dakota alone.
I'm so glad he didn't change it.
I know. And so this is what I had to do. So he had talked to me a couple times, and I said, listen, as an alum, I would be pretty pissed off if you changed it because there is a history with this thing. So he was at an improv practice with me, and I said, okay, Don Quixotes, former Don Quixotes. If Kevin changed the name of the troupe, would you be pissed? Every hand went up. And I said, like, look at all these people in the professional troupe you're in right now. You'll get kicked out of here.
Yeah.
Like, we'll you right out of this place, dude. Come on, get with it. Okay, so let's talk
JJ
about
wields
this.
his soft power.
Right. I always feel like I'm the man pulling the strings. You know?
Gotta kiss the ring, Kevin.
That's right. Dang straight. This last year, you didn't go out and see Trollwood's performance of Cinderella? Trollwood, for those of you who are not local to the area, is a another institution. It's a summer theater camp for kids.
It's actually been a long time since I've caught a Trollwood musical.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, so I can't remember the last one I caught. So no, I did not catch the one this year, Cinderella.
So they did Cinderella this year, which is what they were going to do last year, and then of course had to cancel because of COVID.
Is it based off the Disney Cinderella?
No, it's Rodgers and Hammerstein's, but it's a reimagining even of the Rodgers and Hammerstein one.
Okay.
So this is part of a revival from years ago. So they've added some characters and some different songs. But like if you've ever heard the like a plain yellow pumpkin that becomes a golden carriage, impossible. It's possible. So anyway, so they don't have the songs. There's no bibbity bobbity boo.
Got it. Yeah.
Anyway, so I had the honor and frustration of recording all of the show announcements for them this year. And I took this on thinking that they'd be like, hi, welcome to Trollwood. We're so happy to have you here tonight. You know, in about 20 minutes, the show's going to start. But there's also a lot of sponsors that are in with this. And so every time there was a show, I would get like 20 text messages from people being like, listen, it's intermission. And are you the voice of the announcements? Are you here somewhere? Did you take a job from a kid? And the way that they would catch me, because I could never say it and I could never record it with a straight face, is like, be like, fresh popcorn, ice cold beverages, and we're especially proud of our vegetarian sausage option. Come on out to the concession stands where all your purchases are going to support the youth programs of Trollwood Performing Arts School. Vegetarian sausage option. Now that's a name for an improv troupe right there.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Vegetarian sausage option may just be the title of this episode.
VSO.
Yep. 250 vegetarian sausage option. That's such a great name.
It is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I asked everybody too. I had a standard text I sent back like, did you try the vegetarian sausage option? And everyone said no. They like to know that it was there.
Every time that Greg Carlson and I form like a filmmaking team for like a competition, we try to come up with a brand new team name, and it's always something from something like, it would be something that would come out of something like that, which is where we got names like the Laughing Log Splitters, which I can't go into, and a few other names that we've used that I can't go into. That would be one of those that would like qualify as being like good enough to be like a team name for something. Improv team name would be amazing.
Yeah, right. I think I'm all about that. And like, be like, oh, so you're all vegetarians? No. You're all men? Nope. It's the option. Just let you know it's out there. Okay, so I have this $1,000 and I want to talk briefly about some nonprofits.
Yeah.
So I know of two that are going to receive some funds, but I want to talk to you about things you're passionate about. And so $250 will go to each of these places, up to 4 institutions, and they can be national nonprofits, they can be local nonprofits. You know, we're going to have the kind of this general discussion. And I thought, what a great way to celebrate, because there are people like our buddy Tristan who give to our Patreon every single month. And I've just kind of been sitting on this money being like, what are we going to do for it?
Sure.
Right? Like, I feel bad using it to pay the JJ Meets World bills in a lot of ways, because that's boring. I want to do something like good with it. I want to do something big with it. So what I've decided to do is to do these $250 donations in the name of the JJ Meets World listeners.
Awesome.
So one of them will be to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Awesome.
The AFSP. And so I'm going to give to the local North Dakota chapter, which is something that like our number one patron is very passionate about. And we talk a little bit about in his episode. So if you go back and find Tristan's episode, you can you find out exactly why it's important to him. And it's really become something that's been important to me lately too. And this last year, I think a lot of people felt this feeling of isolation and loneliness. And, you know, do I really matter in the world? And so it now is a time that we should talk about more than ever. Talk about your mental health, your well-being, and the fact that like we're glad you're here in a lot of cases. And so that is one I regularly give to them already, and I can't wait to give this little bonus piece. They do the Out of Darkness Walk, which is a huge event for them. They have these satellite opportunities. If you and your business would like to give, there's opportunities like through that. And what you give is money towards creating resources and, you know, keeping phone banks open so that someone's always at, you know, a 1-800 number that people can reach out to. And it's to do things like simple signage. And I think it's so incredibly important. And I know it's a hot button, like buzzword to say like we should be talking about mental health more, but my God, we really have to change that. And what's amazing is we've come so far in my lifetime with talking and understanding about mental health, and to the point of where like their businesses just say like, listen, if you're struggling, we have resources. Like our company will make sure that there's resources for you. Use your sick days for, you know, sick is not just because you have a cold. It can also be because today's just not a day. You might have had some kind of a trigger. You might have had something that, you know, made today unbearable for you to be around groups of people at your place of business. Right. So I'm very, very passionate about that. And I'll be giving for one to that. Now, the second one is an organization that I only became familiar with like 3 years ago. And I am just utterly moved by what they do. And that's the Ronald McDonald House Charities, specifically the Ronald McDonald House of the Red River Valley. You know, I grew up, my house is right by the old Ronald McDonald House. It's like 4 blocks away. And I used to look at it and I never really understood what it was. And then when you drive through the drive-through, there's the little change bucket there that says, do you want to give to the Ronald McDonald House? And I just never got what it was. I'm like, what's the deal with this? And for those of you who don't know, the Ronald McDonald House provides essentially free lodging to families who are undergoing extreme medical procedures, long stays. A prime example would be this. Let's say that you had a child who had to go through leukemia at age 3, and not every hospital is set up to care for a child in that way. And so let's say you live in a town and you got to travel 200 miles to get to the nearest like really great children's center. Yep. You can't make that every day. You can't make that drive. It's impossible, right? You know, and not only that, but you've got a sick kid. Well, then, okay, so let's say you're going to go to this. Let's say it's a 2-month treatment stay. Well, that's a lot. Like, even if you rented an apartment, that is a ton of money to have to like come up with, let alone how are you going to maintain it? And how are, you know, like, you're going to have to get another like washer and dryer. What's going on? And so what the Ronald McDonald House does is it's like a hotel, but it also has all the comforts of home. They've got a bunch of kitchens downstairs. They have meals that are brought in on a regular basis, and people cook for the families, because if you're at the hospital with your child in the ICU, the last thing you want to think about is having to go and figure out what you're going to eat for that night before you go back to the hospital the next day. The Ronald McDonald House, I am so moved at the stuff that they do on a local level here, and they just built a brand new facility that is right near Sanford, so that parents could walk if they needed to. And they've got more rooms available so that as needs grow, they can move that up. They even do this thing called called the Magic Wall, and so it's so adorable because it looks like an old like rock on the outside, and kids can go like, alakazam, and then there's a magic button that like slides the door open. Oh, cool. And so it's like, the magic word, but inside there are toys, games, and activities that are new that the kid can take and then have for their own. They've got a Star Wars pinball machine that's completely free for people to play. So if they want to play pinball, big shout out to Bill and Emily Brooks from Fargo Pinball, because they hooked them up with that. Nice. There's a big game room, and it doesn't seem run down. It doesn't seem like you're staying at some hotel that hasn't been updated in 30 years. You're staying at a place that is your home away from home. And I am honored that they've asked me to MC their Sweetheart Ball every single year. And when you hear the stories of these families, there's a woman who gave birth to like quintuplets, and having to have that struggle is just amazing. And there are some people who will stay for like 180, 220 days. And the Ronald McDonald House, one of the greatest charities I've ever heard of before. And, the fact that you've got McDonald's as the corporation behind it makes me respect McDonald's a lot too, because they do a lot to support the people who are at the Ronald McDonald House. And you know what? If you pick up Burger King before you come over, they don't care. You do you.
When Dane was in the NICU, Brianna and Nick lived in a Ronald McDonald House. And so I stayed there with them for a couple of days. And this was in Arkansas. And exactly what JJ just said. It's this really nice, large facility. It looks like a hotel. And it's specifically for families whose kids are in the building next door, which is the Children's Hospital, which is where Dane was, obviously living the first 3 or 4 months of his life. I think 3 months is how long he was there. And so, Brianna and Nick lived just across the street at this Ronald. There was no place for them to stay at the NICU, obviously.
Yeah.
And they were hours away from their home, so there was no way that they were going to be able to do that. So it's a fantastic service. And I remember every day we'd get up, go downstairs, and there'd be meals provided. They'd let you know, like, hey, Herberts and Gerberts is coming in this day, or this day we're going to have this, there, or that. And there were other families there so that you could talk and get to know them and stuff. And it was very, very nice. And it was just these families, no other people. So no other like noise, no, business people on their phones and stuff trying to get the continental breakfast or anything like that. It's really peaceful.
And it's almost like finding a support group as well, because you don't have to interact with any of the other families, but I notice when I'm there, like volunteering and working, like people do talk, right? And they're like, oh yeah, like our son was in an ATV accident and is in the ICU or in the NICU, or so I just the work that they do, I am constantly impressed. And also like their local executive director is Jill Christopher, who's easily one of the kindest, most amazing people I've ever met in my entire life. And they're incredibly lucky to have her at the helm of this thing.
We should get her on the show. We should talk to her about this.
Yeah, she'd be a great guest to have on, because we also so Jill Christopher, like every now and then I'll be talking about Jill to somebody and they'll think it's my wife, and I'm like, no, Jill Christopher from the Ronald McDonald House, and they're like, oh, but they do kind of look alike too, so it's caused some issues in my communication style. But just a wonderful, wonderful human being, and really funny too. Yeah. So we will get Jill Christopher on. Tucker, let's talk about where the other $500 is going to go.
Sure.
We're celebrating episode 250, so we might as well just really blow it out.
I've certainly got ideas for it.
Yeah, tell me about it, baby.
Well, we were just talking about Dane. So the charity that I give to right now, I haven't given to them for a little bit, but is the MMIHS Foundation. It's actually where I have my smile.amazon account hooked up to.
Oh, nice.
And it's because of my nephew Dane, who has severe MMIHS. Basically, his digestive system doesn't work. He can't eat food, and so he has to. There's at least $30,000 to $40,000 in medical expenses for him per month, at a minimum, just to keep him with nutrition, amongst other things. He's got a very severe case of it. It's a rare condition, but the families that it affects, it's a massive, massive impact, and it's a crushing blow in that, you don't even know if your loved one is going to survive for the first few years of their life with this kind of diagnosis. So, it's one of those things where, as a disease that affects children, obviously everyone cares about that, but then also it can really severely affect them. So, if you're down with the MMIHS Foundation, it's a national organization. That's one that I'm always talking about, because most people, when you say MMIHS, they go, "What is that?" They have no idea what that is, but it's one of the most severe diseases out there, with a very, very low survivability rate. The other nonprofit that I really like in town, which is also close to my heart, is Cat's Cradle.
Oh, yeah.
I love Cat's Cradle. I love organization. So any organization that helps with pet overpopulation, which is a real problem because there are so many irresponsible pet owners out there that take on the responsibility of a dog or a cat without really realizing what that means. And oftentimes they end up just abandoning them or hoarding them or doing something to them, which ends up leading to a lot of these, innocent creatures having to be euthanized. And I don't know if this stat currently stands up, but I know at one point we had nothing but no-kill shelters in this town, with the exception of if they were hurt, and they had to be put down because of an illness or something like that. But that my understanding is that we actually don't in this town euthanize dogs and cats anymore because they've been in the shelter for a long time. And that's thanks to organizations like Cat's Cradle, where if you've never been there before.
Which, by the way, could you imagine any other industry that would have you're just going to get rid of it in some way? Like, oh, this pickup, no one bought it in 3 weeks, and so we're going to just crush it into a ball.
What's crazy is the amount of animal rescues that are needed specifically because people take on pets without really understanding. So, there's a fish rescue in, I want to say he's located in Michigan. I'll have to find it. I'll send you some videos of this guy's website. This guy basically has a massive piece of property, and he's got thousands of different kinds of fish in different kinds of aquariums on there because people would get a goldfish thinking it's going to live for 2 weeks, and then it lives for 12 years and becomes massive and they can't take care of it anymore. And so this guy just takes on your fish for you all the time. He's got a giant swimming pool that is just nothing but fish inside of it. It's pretty crazy. But, there are bird rescues. There's a bird rescue in town here that does similar work like that. Yeah. So, and it's these specifically when you think about cats and dogs as they exist today, domestic pets, these are creatures that we created, right? They did not exist like this in the wild at all. We bred them to be our pets. And because we did that, I believe we have a certain responsibility to them as our wards,
Amen, brother.
And so at some level you can't, I can understand the plight of someone who goes, listen, I took on the responsibility of a pet. Now I realize I can't do it anymore. Hey, that's really good that you've recognized that. But let's start the responsibility part now and find a way to responsibly rehome this pet versus that sad story you hear about of, someone going out to the woods with a dog, throwing a Frisbee as hard as they can, and then driving off before the dog can get back. Or people who abandon boxes of kittens.
Right. And the thing that drives me nuts is this last year during the pandemic, so many people were like, oh, I'm so lonely, I need an animal. And now there's this weird influx of people abandoning these pets. And so it's like, well, you needed them now, but now that the world's opened up a little bit and you can go back to having fucking brunch.
Right.
You're allowing this animal to suffer in a way. And my God, when you hear about the good work that places like Cat's Cradle are doing, like they'll take a cat who is completely matted and has mites and you give it the care and the love it needs to come around.
And those cats, I mean, they have a forever home if they can't get one with, you or me or someone, they're going to live there. So when you go to Cat's Cradle, the way it's kind of laid out, there's just a bunch of different rooms, and each room's got 3 or 4 cats in it. And those are cats that they figured out get along well with each other, so they can be in those rooms. And a lot of them have been there for years because they're, senior citizen cats that are less likely to be adopted, or they clearly going to have a bunch of medical issues that someone doesn't want to take on. But at least that cat can live in comfort knowing, at that place. And then you can just go there and just give them some attention. Mm-hmm. So they welcome people just to come in off the street and just come play with the cats for
Let's have some cuddles.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah.
Cat's Cradle. And they do something unique too, where they've got like an Amazon wish list. Mm-hmm. So if you're someone, and by the way, I should also point this out. By no means do you, JJ Meets World comes to you for free. It has for 250 episodes and will for another 250. Yep. If you feel so inclined at these things Tucker and I are talking about, these organizations would love your support. And some of them, I know some people don't want to give just a financial gift.
Right.
I think this is going to sound weird, but we love shopping. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if you can go to Cat's Cradle and you can buy, like 200 pounds of cat litter and that's what you want to give them, they will gladly take that from you. But I'm going to tell you this from someone who sat on a number of nonprofit boards, those dollars that you can give that are currency really help a lot because they can use that to buy litter or they can use that to, gosh, we've got an event coming up and we want to be able to advertise it so we can get more people out there. I hate when it goes to payroll, but that has to be there too, right? There are people who are doing this because they are passionate about it, but they also need to eat.
Right. I mean, it's a cost that needs to happen no matter what. That's going to be incurred no matter what. I also really I had mentioned before with the MMIHS Foundation that I donate to them by every time I make an Amazon purchase. So all of my Amazon purchases, I just make sure I have smile.amazon.com up there and I've connected it to that foundation. So yeah, in a given year, I'm only giving them a few bucks, but at the very least, I know that there's something going in that direction.
Yeah.
It's also that made me so sad to find out about not just this disease, but all these other like rare diseases that no one knows about. And so getting even funding to get it researched and learned about is nearly impossible because there's so many other maladies that, obviously affect more people, therefore get more attention. May not always be as severe depending on what the case is. So,
like if you say, I support cancer research, well, there's some really hot button like breast cancers, gets way more money, like probably like $100 to $1 versus like colorectal cancer.
Right.
So I would love to give money to everything that needs it. Right. I also will be the first person to say we are oversaturated right now with nonprofits. And I think in some cases there are people who've started rival nonprofits to other nonprofits because they think that they can do something better.
Right.
And not that they should not do that at all, but it used to be probably like in my grandparents' generation, they were probably like a dozen charitable organizations that were asking every year. Now hundreds of companies, and now they've got a nationwide reach, are trying to get your attention and trying to give to you. If you go back and listen to Patrick Kirby's episode of JJ Meets World, that was one of the things we dig down with him is to say like, it's no longer a squirrel looking for a nut. It is an army of squirrels and nuts have been extinct for years. Mm-hmm. What are they going to do?
Right.
So I don't want them to cannibalize each other, but you're right. Shedding some light and even just sharing stories for that nonprofit. You can be a friend raiser as well as a fundraiser for a lot of these things. And I thank you. I thank to the people who've given to our Patreon over the years. You're supporting 4 really great organizations out there. I just realized I kind of walked myself in this hole because next time they're going to be like, okay, so it's 300. So where are you going to pony up some dough for that thing? Like, all right, episode 1000. Let's do this thing.
We've talked about having live events though and stuff. I mean, maybe there is a live event that is a fundraiser in and of itself for one thing or something like that.
Right.
We figure it out that way.
I also am a big fan of going to like so we do this thing with line benders. It's one of my favorites, where we'll get a call and say like, hey, listen, we're having this spaghetti feed. A member of our church or a person who is on my softball team, they're sick and we're trying to raise some money, and it's a small time fundraiser, right? Like it's a single night.
Right.
It's just a bunch of roasters with spaghetti and meatballs in it, but we'd like if you guys would perform. And so I will quote them. We have a nonprofit rate. And so I'll quote them our nonprofit rate, and I'll realize like, okay, these people are willing to put money into paying us as the performers to come in and do this. And so my favorite thing to do, and it's so incredibly self-serving, but they'll hand me a check, and then I get to hand the check right back and be like, and this is our donation to the evening. And so,
so heads up, if you're a nonprofit and you want some free improv,
you want some
event.
chumps, you want to get to hit a hold of some chumps. We started off with this thing called our year to volunteer. And so it was like on our 10-year anniversary. And what we wanted to do was to give back to all these communities that have supported us over the years. And to be, I mean, cards on the table, for every pro bono event that I do, it leads to 3 or 4 paying gigs. So why would you not do it? Right? It's like being the attorney for Britney Spears right now. Even if you're not going to get paid now, boy, oh boy, you're going to get paid later. Don't worry about it. And you're going to find yourself in the People magazine. So I am a big fan of giving back. And, you know, sometimes people are like nervous when they ask, right? They're like, could we, and I'm like, just spit it out. You want us to come and you want to perform and you only have $40? Like, okay, we'll make that happen in some way, shape, or form. And I will also tell you this too. At no point have I ever turned a check away and then not paid the line benders for it. I always pay. You never usually tell them that we turn down the money,
right?
But that's the beauty of our company, is that I keep a lot of liquid funds so that even if we don't get paid, they are going to get paid. Because I believe in paying the performer. Never tell someone you're going to get great exposure. That is such a BS awful thing to like try and pay someone with.
Yeah.
Now, if you said like we're going to get you like 2,000 YouTube subscribers, okay, because you can figure out a way to monetize that. But
I can't wait to pay my landlord with my exposure.
Right. Exactly. Right. Like, oh, didn't you see? I just did all the Trollwood announcements.
How much exposure for a loaf of bread is going for at Cashwise right now, JJ? Do you know?
Oh God, you know what? I think you need 1,000 exposures to get some free bread.
Man, this economy.
You know, right? Do you remember Ryan Lochte? He was the swimmer who got into trouble. Like they broke into something in Argentina years ago.
Yeah.
I just watched an SNL sketch where Seth
Meyers.
Not Seth Meyers. Maybe his name's not Seth. No, who's the guy who does Family Guy?
Seth
MacFarlane. Seth MacFarlane's playing him, and he's reviewing this stuff as Ryan. Like he's like, hey, like yeah. So it's I love this book, and it's this kid, and he does this stuff. I give it 3 swims, and they're like, 3 swims? How many out of how many other swims? He goes 3. And so the next one is like, I give this 6 swims. He did it in just this like, oh, he was reviewing new television shows that are coming out that fall, and they said, oh, and then we hear American Dad's coming, and then he drops a character entirely, and he goes, yeah, and it's going to be a pretty solid season.
How many vegetarian sausage options would you rate this episode?
Give it about a 17. Yeah, I give it 17 vegetarian sausage options. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. I need to borrow $1,000 right now.